If your surname appears on this list, you are not just a European by ancestry. You are tied to a specific royal line, a specific stretch of land, a specific web of marriages and rebellions, and in most cases, a specific throne that either lifted your family into legend or nearly wiped it from the earth. 15 surnames, 15 royal bloodlines, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly where yours stands. Watch until number 1, because that surname carries a secret the Crown of England spent more than a century trying to bury. When you hear which family it names, you will understand why the Tudors could never sleep easily on their own throne. Number 15. Stuart. The name comes from the Old English steward, keeper of the household, an office once held by the High Stewards of Scotland. It sounds practical, almost servile. But the Stuarts were not remembered as servants. They were remembered as the longest-reigning royal dynasty Britain has ever known. Their line ruled Scotland from 1371, took the English throne under James I in 1603, and gave Europe the doomed Mary, Queen of Scots, and the executed Charles I. If your surname is Stuart or Stuart, your bloodline runs through a family that gave the world kings, queens, martyrs, and one civil war that changed how nations think about their monarchs forever. The next name most people assume is purely English. It is not. It is Welsh, and its origins are far older than the school books admit. Number 14. Tudor. From the Welsh Tudor, an ancient personal name rooted in the small aristocracy of Anglesey. It sounds ancient because it is, but the Tudors are not remembered for their island. They are remembered because a nearly landless Welsh nobleman named Owen Tudor married the widowed queen of Henry V, and their grandson became Henry VII at Bosworth Field in 1485. If your surname is Tudor, your line brushes against the family that ended the Wars of the Roses, broke with Rome, buried queens, and produced Elizabeth I. Your name carries the sound of a court that turned England into a kingdom the rest of Europe could no longer ignore. The next name sounds like a border sheriff. It was. It was also the surname of one of the most feared noble houses in medieval England. Number 13. Percy. From the Norman Percy, a place name in Normandy, carried across the Channel by a knight who served William the Conqueror after 1066. Nothing poetic in the meaning, but the Percys became the Earls of Northumberland, guardians of the Scottish March, and the family that fought and often defied every English king from Edward I to Elizabeth. Henry Percy, called Hotspur, died at the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403, leading a rebellion against Henry IV. If your surname is Percy, your ancestry threads through the family Shakespeare wrote into legend, and that England could neither govern without nor fully trust. The next name is one of the most common in the English-speaking world. It also happens to belong to the ducal house that produced 2 queens beheaded by the same king. Number 12. Howard. From the Old Norse Havarður, meaning high guardian, though some scholars trace it to the Anglo-Saxon Hereward. The Howards became Dukes of Norfolk, premier peers of England, and provided Catherine Howard and, through her mother, Anne Boleyn, both queens of Henry VIII, both executed on his orders. Thomas Howard, 3rd Duke of Norfolk, spent his old age in the Tower, waiting for the axe, and only Henry's own death in 1547 saved him. If your surname is Howard, your bloodline crosses the family that stood closest to the English throne, married into it twice, and paid for that closeness in blood. Before we continue to the next 11 names, if this is teaching you something you did not know about your own family, subscribe to this channel. Every week we release a new video on the hidden histories buried inside surnames and bloodlines across Europe. Tap subscribe so the next one finds you. Now, the next name belongs to the man who saved a country. Alone. Excommunicated. Against the strongest army in the north. Number 11. Bruce. From the Norman de Bruce, a place name in the Cotentin Peninsula, brought to Britain in the 11th century. A geographical footnote, but the Bruces gave Scotland Robert the Bruce, who crushed the army of Edward II at Bannockburn in 1314 and secured Scottish independence in the Declaration of Arbroath 6 years later. If your surname is Bruce, your line runs through the family that refused English overlordship and turned a hunted, excommunicated fugitive into a king whose tomb Scotland still guards at Dunfermline Abbey. The next name is Irish today. It began as Norman French, and its founders helped conquer an entire kingdom in a single generation. Number 10. Fitzgerald. From the Norman French Fils de Gerald, son of Gerald, tracing back to Gerald of Windsor and his wife Nesta, a Welsh princess of the House of Dinefort. The Fitzgeralds became the Earls of Kildare and Desmond, the great Hiberno-Norman dynasty of Ireland, and for centuries were the uncrowned kings of the island. Silken Thomas Fitzgerald led an open revolt against Henry VIII in 1534, was hanged, drawn and quartered at Tyburn in 1537, and 5 of his uncles executed with him. If your surname is Fitzgerald, your ancestors were the family England had to break in order to hold Ireland at all. The next name is one most people cannot even spell correctly. That is not accidental. Its guardians preferred it that way. Number 9. Sinclair. From the Norman Saint Clair, meaning holy light, the Sinclairs became Earls of Orkney and Caithness, Lords of Rosslyn, and are tied by centuries of legend to the Knights Templar and the mysterious Rosslyn Chapel, built in the 15th century and covered in carvings historians still argue about. The Templar connection is debated, but the documented record is dramatic enough. A Sinclair fought at Bannockburn. Henry Sinclair may have sailed toward the North Atlantic in the 1390s, a voyage still argued by serious scholars. If your surname is Sinclair, your line is threaded through one of the most secretive noble families in medieval Europe. The next name did not sit on one throne. It sat on almost every throne in Central Europe for 600 years. Number 8. Habsburg. From the medieval German Habichtsburg, Hawk's Castle, a small fortress in what is now Switzerland. From that hawk's nest rose the family that produced Holy Roman Emperors from 1438 to 1806, kings of Spain from 1516 to 1700, and emperors of Austria until 1918. They ruled through marriage more than through war, and their empire once stretched from the Netherlands to the Philippines. If your surname is Habsburg, or any of its regional variants, your ancestry touches a dynasty that shaped Europe's borders more than any other house on this list. The next name comes from a small castle in central France. It ended up ruling half the continent. Number 7. Bourbon. From the town of Bourbon-l'Archambault, whose lords rose from minor French nobility into the royal line under Henry IV in 1589. The Bourbons gave France its most famous kings, Louis XIV and Louis XVI, and their branch still wears the crown of Spain today. If your surname is Bourbon, your line runs through Versailles, through the French Revolution, through the guillotine that took Louis and Marie Antoinette in 1793, and through the restorations that followed. Few names on this list carry so much fire. The next name did not simply fall from a throne. It was hunted down room by room in a cellar in Yekaterinburg. Number 6. Romanov. From the Russian Roman, a personal name carried into Slavic lands through Byzantine Christianity. The Romanovs took the Russian throne in 1613 and held it for 3 centuries, from Michael I to Nicholas II, who was murdered with his wife and 5 children in July 1918. If your surname is Romanov, your ancestry brushes against the family that built St. Petersburg, faced Napoleon in 1812, ended serfdom, and then perished in a revolution that reshaped the 20th century. The next name did not begin in a palace, it began in a bank, and it ended in the papacy. Number 5. Medici. Possibly from the Italian medico, physician, though the family's true origins remain debated by historians. The Medici rose in 15th century Florence, from banking into rulership, produced 2 popes and 2 queens of France, Catherine and Marie, and funded much of the Italian Renaissance. Without their money, there would be no Michelangelo as we know him, no Botticelli, no Brunelleschi dome. If your surname is Medici, your bloodline is tied to the family that bought, married, and painted its way into European royalty from the merchants' benches of Florence. The next name belongs to a family that seized a duchy by force and lost it the same way. Number 4. Sforza. From the Italian sforzare, to force, a nickname given to a mercenary captain in the 15th century. Francesco Sforza married the illegitimate daughter of the last Visconti Duke of Milan and took the duchy for himself in 1450. His descendants ruled Milan on and off for a century, patronized Leonardo da Vinci, and were finally crushed between the armies of France and Spain in the Italian wars. If your surname is Sforza, your line runs through a family that proved raw skill could carve a crown out of any Italian city, and that the same crown could be lost in a single afternoon of battle. The next name is the root of the French monarchy itself. Every legitimate French king from 987 onward descended from it. Number 3. Capet. From the Latin cappa, cloak, a nickname carried by Hugh Capet, elected king of the Franks in 987. Every French king who followed, from the direct Capetians through the Valois and the Bourbons, descends from that one man. When Louis XVI was tried by the Revolutionary Convention in 1792, they stripped him of every royal title and addressed him only as Citizen Louis Capet, using the name as an insult. If your surname is Capet, however rare it is today, your line reaches back to the founder of 1,000 years of French monarchy. The next name belonged to the family that ruled the Eastern Roman Empire when the Western one had already fallen. Number 2. Komnenos. From the Greek village of Komne in Thrace. The Komnenoi took the Byzantine throne in 1081 under Alexios I, held Constantinople through the First Crusade, and restored an empire that had nearly collapsed. Their descendants founded the Empire of Trebizond in 1204, which survived until 1461, when the last Komnenos emperor, David, was executed on the orders of Mehmed II. If your surname is Komnenos, or one of its many Greek and Balkan variants, your ancestry threads through the last true emperors of the Roman East. And now, number 1. This name was not simply pushed off the throne. It was systematically hunted from the historical record by the family that replaced it. Descendants were arrested, executed, and quietly stripped of their inheritance for more than a century. What survived because certain families risked everything to keep the memory alive. Here is what they protected. Number 1. Plantagenet. From the Old French plante-genet, the sprig of broom that Geoffrey of Anjou wore in his helmet in the 12th century. From that sprig came the dynasty that ruled England from 1154 to 1485, from Henry II through Richard III. They gave the world Richard the Lionheart, the Magna Carta signed under John in 1215, the conquest of Wales, the 100 Years' War with France, and finally the Wars of the Roses. When Henry Tudor killed Richard III at Bosworth in 1485, the Plantagenet line did not simply end. It was hunted. Edward Plantagenet, 17th Earl of Warwick, was executed by Henry VII in 1499 on charges most historians consider fabricated. Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury, and the last legitimate Plantagenet of the direct line, was beheaded by Henry VIII in 1541 at the age of 67 after a botched execution that horrified even her guards. Every remaining claimant was watched, imprisoned, or removed. If your surname is Plantagenet, or any of the recorded branches carried into obscurity by scattered families, your bloodline is the one the Tudors could not fully erase, though they tried for 3 generations. 15 surnames, 15 dynasties, 15 corridors leading back through wars, marriages, revolutions, executions, and quiet acts of survival. Your surname is not just a name, it is a house, it is a territory, it is a set of loyalties that men and women once defended with their lives, and in some cases with their thrones. Write your surname in the comments and tell me which of these lines your family remembers. And if you know a specific story your ancestors carried out of Europe, whether it was a fortune, a flight, or a fragment of a crown, share it, because those stories deserve to be heard. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. The next video is already waiting for you.